My humble respect to Guru Mahan, Guru Piran Sangran, Guru Piran Swiki. Um, I'm actually continuing this journey of exploring the human mind and human brain, and to take a peek into our brain to see what happens when we practice introspection, contemplation, reflection, meditation, and yoga, the different types of things that helps our mind to stay focused. And I've been covering, I spoke about the neurotransmitters, that is our circuit system, how meditation helps that. Then I spoke about how in our brain, we have the cerebrum, which is the two parts hemisphere, and how when we practice meditation, the neurotransmitter starts firing away, and you see that parts of our brain, the right hemisphere and left hemisphere, the gray matter grows, and it has an impact in terms of our body and our brain. So here, I covered that. You can look at that clip. And then I also spoke about the frontal lobe of our brain, how this is very important for planning and abstract thinking. How, as I mentioned in part two, the cerebrum consists of gray matter, and when that grows, the frontal lobe becomes more dense, a lot more connectivity. You'll see that we're able to think better. We can abstract thinking and so on. And then I went on to speak about the prefrontal cortex, which is just in this in the big in the top first surface here in the front. Again, that is very important as we start practicing. In the early days, concentration becomes a little bit difficult, but as we start practicing, we start nurturing positive tendencies. Our concentration improves, our happiness improves, our creativity improves. We start finding the reason why creativity improves is that the circuit system becomes more integrated, that the flow of information becomes better. So this is something that we covered in the prefrontal cortex development. We also talked about the pituitary gland, what happens to the pituitary gland. And the pituitary gland is a very important gland that controls it's the master gland that controls all our hormone system. And as you see that as we age, our glands, endocrinal systems slows down, and we see that our hormone systems starts declining, our estrogen, our testosterone, all those things starts declining, and we see that we lose body mass, our hair grays, hair falls for some people, we have muscle losses, we get menopause. All those things are related to our gland systems that releases hormones. But when we practice meditation, particularly when we stimulate the pituitary gland, the master gland, you see that the hormone releases become more harmonized. So when we age, when the hormones for ordinary people starts declining, ours become more and more harmonized. It slows down the aging process. So you see that people who practice meditation, if you see somebody who's practicing meditation in the 60s, compared to somebody who don't practice meditation, you can see the difference in terms of their, concentration powers, in terms of their outlook, in terms of their health. So we see that this pituitary, particularly when we practice the third eye meditation, when we have a lot of flow of, we have a lot of neural activity, it stimulates the gland. That controls pretty much most of the other glands. And I covered that, I believe, in today or yesterday's morning message. The sixth structural change is in our parietal lobe, which is actually very important for us to understand, for the movement of our limbs and understanding speech and, sensing pain. All those things have an impact on us. If the body is not healthy, if the brain is not healthy, the body is not healthy, and you see that it's difficult to sit down and meditate or concentrate. So I spoke about the parietal lobe, which is very important for us in terms of limb movement. So when we age, this is something that happens, that there is a decline, the density in that area, the gray matter starts losing because the aging process. And we see that sometimes, our limb movement, people find it hard to walk, they stumble. So again, speech slurs, so these are things that happens as we age. I spoke about the what we call the occipital lobe and also temporal lobe the last time, which is very important for that helps us in terms of processing centers of our brain. This is helps us to visually, physically do things. Also able to do all the asanas and the postures, and it also impacts our auditory perceptions. So you can see that actually when we age, all these faculties starts declining because there's something happening in the brain that is slowly, the density in those parts of the brains that starts declining. That is why they say that use your brain or you will lose it, right? So it's very important that as we age, particularly those who are in the 40s, 50s, 60s, you should intensify meditation. You should continue your meditation, introspection, reading, reflecting, because it really has a major impact on all the areas of the brain that is critical for the health of the body, the mind, our psychological state, and also help us with our enlightening process. So this is what I covered so far. I believe I'm still writing the messages we're coming, we covered, I believe, up to, the sixth structural change. I want to today cover another change that happens in our brain as we practice meditation. And this is actually this aspect of our brain, which is what we call the cerebellum. You see, this is right behind our back here. And those who are practicing meditation, you'd see that over time, you'd feel the pressure there. The pressure is actually when you practice the Kundalini meditation, as Mahan has shown, when we raise that energy fields, you see that the back of the brain, sometimes this is called the little brain. And let me explain what that little brain is. Right? That little brain is got, you see, very interestingly, over time, evolution, the brain structure changed. And this small brain has got a key role in the early part of our human evolution to coordinate our movements, including the gross movement and also fine movement. In the early stage of the human being's evolution, or even earlier than that, these parts of the brain were already there, at least in a primitive way. But over time, it evolved. And as we start evolving, as we start thinking deeper, introspecting, contemplating, reflecting every day on really, really deep things, you see that this part of the brain is stimulated. And very interesting is that this part of the brain is very important for coordinating movements, right? And that is why we always say that don't hit behind the head, because it has an impact on many faculties in our body, right? So it coordinates our movement, including fine movements. Both the gross movement and fine movement is actually, example is that our eye movement, right? The eyes move because there are muscles there. And if the eyes doesn't move, you see that it cannot capture certain vision. And so it is very important that this part of the brain is harnessed. It is also very, critical for motor coordination and other aspect, which is actually, motor learning. And this is very important because when we practice meditation, when that part of the brain, develops and the gray matter increases, very interestingly, that we are able to learn. For example, there are certain things that's after a certain period when it's not evolving or not developed, it's hard to learn. And this part is really important on the learning part of learning. For example, learning to cycle. right? This part of the brain is really important because it helps you to the motor learning, movements, and in the movements you learn, and it registers there. The other one is playing musical instruments. When we play musical instruments, this part of the brain is very important in learning that tone. And from that tone, there's a structural change that happens, that evolves, that you are able to then become more and more refined in the way you play the music. In that same way, when we start developing this part, a lot of the gross movements, gross activities become more and more subtle. We're able to pick up subtle things, right? So if you see those musicians, they they listen to a particular music, we may miss it, but they would pick up the small, small, subtle differences and changes, including mistakes, that we would not pick it up because the brain has evolved to a level that it's so refined, it picks up subtleties. And this is the part of the brain that is so important when we practice meditation. That gross vibrations, all of us get, we feel. But we, when this part is really enhanced, the learning from this gives us very, very subtle experiences and learnings. So this is something that nature has built with us. And this is how we see the language, mathematics, deep abstract thinking we were able to cultivate, right? And this also gives you a good, refined learning of the subtleties of nature and life. It also controls the balance and reflexes, right? So, oftentimes when somebody pushes you, you can balance yourself, and you're able to reflex. Your reflexing power is very good. If something comes in front, you know how to stop very quickly. And this is critical because as this part of the brain evolves, so what we see here is that this part of the brain actually controls the balance and reflexes. So we see that, when a child is born, this part of the brain is not very well developed. And you see that their control and balance is not so great. You put them up, they fall. Their reflexive ability is low. Uh, but over time, as they grow and they eat nutritious food, and as they learn new things, through both the motor coordination and motor learning, that part of the brain evolves. And we start teaching them, abstract concepts. If we are lucky, we teach them how to introspect, contemplate, reflect, and meditate. You see, this part of the brain really evolves. And interestingly, that over time, their balance and reflexes become really good. But what happens is that as time goes on, we see that when we age, and we don't do things like, we don't play music, we don't learn, we don't play chess, we stop completely. We just sit in front of the TV and watch TV, right? Parts of our brain starts shutting down. And when that happens, you see that, our balance, you see, as people age, they find it hard to balance themselves, right? Their reflexing power declines significantly. And this is why you see that many people, when they get older, they slip and fall, they trip, and so on. And because the balance is not in sync. So as I mentioned, this is the little brain. It is like a brain in a brain itself, which is really fascinating. If those who are very interested to know how this evolves and how it continues to evolve as we start using it effectively, and particularly introspecting, contemplating, reflecting, and doing abstract things. That's why reading is very, very important. The concern I have is that the younger generation slowly are not into the reading culture, and slowly they are losing out in terms of developing parts of the brain. This part of the brain also evolves, and as it evolves, our body posture and certain asanas that we do is also tied to this area, right? So some people can do really complex body postures, undertake various, simple asanas, yoga asanas, and more complex yoga asanas, because this part of the brain enables them to do this refined movements. And we see this a lot in dancers that actually do, really complex dance, very subtle movements, right? Including people who do gymnastics and so on. We see that they can do very, very complex things because when they do this, this part of the brain evolves, right? So that is why it is very important that when we do meditation, introspection, contemplation, it is very important to also couple that with, exercise, right? Because it really, really helps stimulates many parts of the brain, particularly this part of the brain. And it is really important, particularly as you're aging, because it really helps you with your body posture, with your balance, with your reflexes. And one of the positions that is really crucial, which I see many people cannot do, is actually to sit in that lotus position in the meditation, practice. You see, Mahan, 80 years old, he still could sit in that position, right? So this is another complex position. Obviously, there are other asanas, but when we sit in these postures, practice to sit, the body becomes more and more flexible, more agile, and that flexibility and agility of the brain enables the flexibility and agility of the body, and it reinforces one another. But if without this cerebellum, without developing it, you see that many people will find it hard to do certain body postures, exercises, including asanas. So it is very important that when we couple meditation, we should also couple that with exercises, deep thinking. As I always say, introspection, contemplation, reflection, and meditation is so, so important in that, continuum, right? So meditation alone is not enough. But when you couple this, it reinforces one another. There are many studies that show this, because when we practice meditation, uh, the gray matter in our brain, in this part of the brain, different parts, as I said in earlier, different parts of the brain, the gray matter uh, density increases because the neural connectivity is flowing through information, flowing through energy, and it's opening up, pathways. And when that happens, you see that oxygen and nutrients are brought through, and the gray matters, which are cells in the brain, starts growing and developing. Particularly as we age, parts of the cells starts dying. So the growth rate and the death rate determines how healthy your brain is. If the brain is healthy, the mind is healthy. The mind is able to concentrate, mind is able to be peaceful, the mind is able to go deeper, more wider. It helps the intellect. Intellect is the ability to analyze and so on. And that intellect is very important for us to make sense of the world, including the gross body and the subtleties that are embedded in our own personality. So you see that there are articles that actually show that meditation and mindfulness increases the gray matter, increases the size of the cerebellum, that gives you a lot more connectivity and a lot more ability to do all the things that I'm speaking about, which is really important as we age. And I can feel this even as I age. I'm now getting into my sixth series, or in the 60s, and I feel very energetic. I feel very, very, can do multiple things. And that is only possible because of meditation. And I know many people, my own colleagues and friends and family, that age, they're kind of toning down, wiring down. But if we practice this, we can do multiple things. The brain becomes an amazing, instrument for exploration, discovery, including helping us attain that enlightened living. So this, and it reinforces, I call this endogenous. When we practice this introspection, contemplation, reflection, it makes structural changes in our brain that enables us to do so many things, experience so many things that are subtle, gives agility to the brain and the mind. It helps us to understand complex information. It helps us to think in a more abstract way. It helps us to visualize things in a much more broader, more magnified way that gives us a much more amazing experience. And, later on I'll speak about, when that happens, you see that uh, every waking moment becomes a really wonderful moment, a moment of experiencing that divinity in us that is embedded in us. But what I want to tell you is that meditation makes that structural changes. Like exercise, when we exercise our body, every day we go for a walk, we carry weights, we do this, you see our muscle mass still is maintained. At least it doesn't decline rapidly as somebody who doesn't do anything. Right? So in that same way, our brain needs that mental exercise for the mind to, become more deeper and more operate in a more efficient way, and ultimately making us understand what is all this about. It requires so much in bandwidth to be able to really decipher the secrets of life. Uh, an ordinary human being's mind is not enough bandwidth to be able to do this. These great saints and sages and Mahans discovered a way to raise that bandwidth, increase that gray matter to be able to unpack the secrets of life. And this is what I've discovered over the many years of practicing Mahan's teachings and practicing the meditation, that, things are making sense. You can connect things better, and it helps you as a student. It helps you as a professional. It helps you as a householder. It helps you also to manage complex relationships, complex people, in complex situations. But also, more importantly, it helps you to age gracefully and, manage your life, as, parts of your body uh, in the aging process uh, declines if we don't do anything, but at least you're able to gracefully go through this journey in the 60s, in the 70s, in the 80s, and perhaps in the 90s, until one fine day you say, okay, time for me to move on. I've had a wonderful life, and leave everything back except that experiences for others. So I hope that, this satsangs that I'm covering now gives you a better understanding of, we have no choice but to practice meditation. It is more important than anything in our lives if we want to improve our quality of our life, and live a wonderful, productive, prosperous, and happy life. And I hope that this lectures help you to really give focus for introspection, contemplation, reflection, and meditation. So true.